I'm going to introduce both these lovely ladies first. Has anyone ever met or seen these lovely people around? Yeah, there's a few familiar faces. Okay, so Jessica Jurd, or Jess as she likes to be called. Jessica Jurd is a mother who is family and friend orientated. I need to have a drink. For years, Jess has been an unpaid therapist while doing hair, which is very true. Over the last few years, Jess has recognised that for herself to be empowered in creating a beautiful future for her and her family, she's had to become self-directed in finding knowledge and what and who is influencing the world she lives in. Through these convictions and the desire for a better world, Jess has had the courage to step into a professional arena of governance to better understand and be a voice to and for personal and societal freedom. So welcome to Jess. And the lovely Kate Mason. So, give her a clap as well. So look, Kate Mason is a community advocate who is concerned about the lack of government and corporate media transparency regarding public-private partnerships transformations, which are being rolled out in towns and cities. Kate has an extensive work history in welfare and community development. She's committed to people having all the information available to make informed and considered decisions on anything which impacts on their lives and the environment. So welcome, Kate. Thank you. So, we're going to get started. I'm going to set up this one and bring Jess up. So Jess is going to kick off our presentation.
Okay, hi everyone. I just wanted to say thank you for coming today, and hopefully we can have a bit of fun while we learn some new things. Do you know how towns, cities, road networks and public transport are planned? How the government works out what is needed in your town, and how they are developed, with what regulations they have to achieve this? I didn't either, so how did I end up here talking on a mic to you all about what I've been learning for the last year and a half? And to be honest, still don't know even half of it. The government planning documents half the time feel like you're reading another language. They make everything out to be utopia and don't flinch at how much tax dollar money they're spending, when sometimes the items they are spending it on, we would be asking why. In the last 3 years, there's been a major shift in how our normal day-to-day lives have changed. There's such a directional push for digital, for smart technology to be everywhere. How many self-serve checkouts are now in our major retail businesses? How many people are paying with their cards, phone, or even watches? Does this really stop petty crime? And will it affect jobs? These are the questions that I think about, which started me on this journey of what does this mean for us, for our future. Raise your hand if you've ever heard the term in the public interest. Okay, good, all right. So in all the government and council planning documents, it will have this term in it. They use it to justify why or why not a development should or should not go ahead. How do they know what the public interest is? Draft plans go out on expedition. This is when the community is given the opportunity to have their say, to have any changes made to the documents. No changes will be made if no submissions are placed. It will be seen as the community agree with the plan. Raise your hand if you know how to find these plans or even if they existed. They're not easy to find if you don't know they exist or even where to look. But hopefully after today, we've helped each other on how we can find the information and how you can have your say. So let's start on some of the documents Council has. The Development Application, or better known as DA, is a formal application submitted to Council for permission to build a new development. For example, building a house, putting in a pool, constructing a shed, or could be subdividing land, dual occupancy, or even multi-level development, just to name a few. The Community Participation Plan, or CPP, sets out how and when Council undertake community participation as part of its planning functions, and outlines how the community is engaged. By following the legislation from Government, Council will give written notice to individual landowners or occupants, an announcement on Council's Have Your Say website, on Council's DA tracker, or available information and documents placed online or in public places like the council building or the library, etc. The CPP document covers planning policy, plan making, planning agreements, development controls, and and assessments. If you go to Council's website and in the search tool type in the Community Participation Plan, it goes over everything you need to know for a DA, for what a complying development is, what a council-related development is, what's in the development control plans and the local environmental plans, which is better known as the LEP or the DCP, which in my opinion are the most important ones to go and read on. Council even have contribution plans. This is not just big time developers. This could be yourself wanting to build a house on your property where council have fees for new and existing infrastructure in your LGA. For example, building a house for $100,000 on your own block of land could cost you about $20,000 in fees, broken down into something like $7,000 for footpaths, $7,000 for open space, and only about $2,000 for roads the last time I checked. And if you look at the screen, it has the amounts of different parts of the LGA. So you can see all that on Council's website. With that all said, I'm going to give you an example of a checklist that Council do for assessing a development that I've been able to work out. They first look at the land use through the LEP. This outlines what a landowner can or cannot do, for example, zoning, height variations on single-storey or multi-level floor space of the development, minimum lot sizes, subdivisions, and protection of heritage and environmentally sensitive areas. Then the DCP provides more specific controls for detailed design aspects, for example, minimum amount of car parking, the setbacks of buildings from the street, and minimum landscaping requirements. DCPs are designed to be more flexible documents than LEPs. So if something is a non-compliance with the LEPD, trying to put two words together, the LEP, they will use the DCP to justify non-compliance, as DCPs are not a form of delegated legislation, which to me seems a bit like a loophole. The Hunter Regional Planning Document 2041 is a DCP, which we will touch on soon. Unlike state environmental planning policies, which is an SEPP, it's another one you can look up on Council's website, and LEPs, that's a state one, so you'd have to look up on New South Wales planning, all of which are approved by the state government. The DCP does not require state government approval. It is a non-statutory planning document that sets the vision for the area. All land is zoned and have restrictions and permitted developments. So when you're looking at doing a development, you have to make sure the zoning is for that purpose. I'll give you an example. R1, general resident, permits without consent environmental protection works and home occupants. Permitted with applying for consent, attached dwellings, bed and breakfasts, boarding houses, central base childcare facilities, and semi-detached dwellings, to name a few. If you want to open a boarding house, you can, with permission. It's very much encouraged with all these planning documents, even to the point in the last few months, a lot of zoning has changed in Cessnock, and one thing that I know that's changed is the height restrictions on the main street. Raise your hand if you heard about smart cities and 6-city regional being on our council agenda back in March. Yep, thought so. Where I asked the General Manager to bring a report back to council whether Cessnock was signed up to join the smart city transformation, if we were a member, who authorised this, when and why hasn't the community been consulted, what is the cost, how it impacts our lives, and who will be part of the 6-city regional zoning. Now, I asked this question because I submitted this to council for February's meeting and got denied, that it was better for a private briefing rather than a public council meeting. The General Manager said yes, Cessnock was signed up, that everyone was automatically signed up. But the Director of Planning said no. Interesting, isn't it? That March council meeting was all about no. The Director said no. You're wasting council's time. Cessnock will never be a smart city. But they wouldn't speak about the General Manager saying yes, or the fact my questions and information was all from the Hunter Regional Planning document. That is why I resubmitted it for March. Following the General Manager's email with its link, I went and read all I could about the 6-city region. How does our Director of Planning not know we are a part of the 6-city regional planning? It's in all the planning documents. The opening line is the Commission has conducted meetings and briefings with 43 councils within the 6-city region, with the First Nations people across all 6 cities, webinars with the stakeholders, and participated in dozens of briefings hosted by community and industry groups. Have you been to any of these meetings or briefings? Have you been asked what you think about this plan? I know I found out from a newsletter email from the local government where we get updates on what the government's up to. I read everything I could on that email and then asked the questions, which might I add, were never answered. They envision a connected region of 6 cities where they can move people and goods across the region in 90 minutes, and everyone in the region is digitally and globally connected in a nanosecond. In each city, great jobs are 30 minutes by public transport from great homes. We enjoy a greater range of lifestyle choices connected to economic opportunities, and most people live in vibrant local centres and neighbourhoods where all our daily needs are met within a 15-minute walk. Sounds great, doesn't it? No more trips to Newcastle just to get your basic needs. Finally, some public transport. And it seems like you'll be able to walk everywhere, and maybe better digital service to go along with your great job and your great home. But at what cost? If this is such a great idea for building a township, why hasn't it been done prior? Why are we not having open, transparent talks about it? Why, when you ask questions instead of answers, you're told you're a conspiracy theorist? With substantial work being undertaken by the Commission, the Department of Planning and Environment, Infrastructure New South Wales, Transport for New South Wales, local government and industry in planning these 6 cities, and more recently, federal and state government commits to funding are providing essential foundations to enable the 6-city vision. It seems that the voice to Parliament is connected to these cities. The 6-city discussion paper and the Hunter Regional Planning 2041 document states that the First Nations people need to be recognised and embedded in planning for our future. Does that mean they need it in the Constitution? By listening to and establishing partnerships with representatives of First Nations communities, Aboriginal community-controlled organisations, traditional custodians, and local Aboriginal land councils, the Commission will enable First Nations perspectives to inform and influence all its planning and decision processes. The ongoing custodianship of the land being embedded into the Constitution is a fundamental shift in New South Wales strategic planning. What do you think this means for our country? How does this change our planning processes? Will this be another land zoning to abide by? As it is now, we have a national Indigenous organisation that has an executive voice to the government with 42 executives at an average total cost of $10.5 million per year. We currently have over 3,000 registered Indigenous organisations at a higher cost to the taxpayer than Medicare. Once the voice is embedded into the Constitution, the Commission will establish a First Nations advisory panel to advise on regional strategic planning. The panel will operate as a voice to the Commission and guide implementation of the region and city plans. Seems to me like they're pretty certain it will get a yes vote to plan their strategic planning around it. Maybe this is why I was threatened and nearly physically assaulted at the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders Committee meeting. This is a sensitive topic that has everyone so divided, so I encourage you all to go look into this before you make up your mind. But I leave you on this little thought. There are so many mobs, how can there be one voice to Parliament? How can I speak on your behalf? How would it even work? Does it really fix or solve any issues, or does it actually create more? Thank you. The Commission will work with Transport for New South Wales for planning of the digital and physical connectivity to ensure the New South Wales freight strategy maximises the benefits of a joined-up 6-city region, all the way out to the airports and seaports to be better connected to the world. Plans for fast rail, new metro links and improved bus services will connect communities within and between cities so that people and goods can travel across the 6-city region in a safe, sustainable and convenient way while reducing our carbon emissions. Right now you might be thinking, yeah right, Cessnock doesn't even have a train service and hardly any buses, but remember, this is planning for those services. Do you want to know what it's going to cost? How are they going to get the money to fund this? Are we going to be paying more taxes? Are our rates going to go up like the land values did? Would there be a carbon emissions tax? What is sustainable and convenient travel? They're just a few of my questions that I had. We all know that Labor is set on a net zero by 2030. Now, this planning document goes into how airports are moving towards net zero, with strategies to reduce the carbon footprint of our airports. When we don't make a lot of things in Australia with a non-existing manufacturing industry, are we closing down our mining? Now our bees have been under attack. How are we going to afford to import goods with airports moving towards net zero? The state infrastructure strategy calls for the government to progressively fund and deliver the fast rail strategy as an immediate priority, with a rough figure of $275 million for further detailed planning and to commence early works of the fast rail network, with further funding subject to agreement with the federal government. Wonder how much more they will need. While they're planning to improve the public transport with trains and buses, most of the planning fails to speak on improvements to road networks. Instead, they plan on the roads networks no longer being planned around cars, but instead planned around people, for everything to be in a walking or cycling distance. If you're in the six-city region, you will have access to a quality home that is connected, resilient and affordable, that are key worker housing on government land. This is how people on low to moderate incomes can meet other basic living costs such as food, clothing, etc. So not lowering the cost of living, offering you a key worker house that you don't own because it's on government land. The integrated planning makes sure you'll be able to train, bus or walk from your resilient house that is more green, not built in climate vulnerable areas. What about your car? What is green? And what is a climate vulnerable area? By working with local council, the Commission recommends increasing the multi-unit and higher density housing by using their local housing strategy plans. So remember back to the start where I was talking about LEPs and DCPs? This is saying they're encouraging council to develop multi-units and higher density housing, which means building up. More apartments and townhouses on smaller blocks of land without the space for car parking. We're currently seeing this happen in our LGA, Huntley, just approved by state, for about 186 or 185 units on 217 square metres to about 300, I think it was, metre square blocks for apparent affordable housing. On the screen now is a recommendation from Council from March 2023 meeting where we had a DA application for South Cessnock that has an existing house on the 800 square metre block and was refused at March meeting but brought back for April and approved to build 2 multi-level units built at the rear of the property. They had to do it as a strata as the land was not big enough to subdivide. These units will have 4 bedrooms, 4 en-suites, 1 toilet on its own for each unit. Only 6 car parks. Can you see a 6-car car park? How will the garbage truck get around in that tiny street? Because that's a cul-de-sac, if you can see up the very top. They're going to do up that little bit of road up here, and that is going to be a cul-de-sac right near the railway line. And this on there. So yeah, my question was, how's the garbage truck going to get around in that tiny street? Not to mention what happens if they ever do open up the railway line again. Once this is built, I'm waiting for the existing house to be removed and another 2 units to be built at the front of the property. With these documents encouraging this sort of development, I can see that we'll be seeing more. And keep an eye on West Cessnock near the Australian Hotel, because there's one coming there soon too. These planning documents go more in depth on planning, more than I'll ever have time to speak on today. But go read the plans for jobs being closer to home, how to create a 15-minute city, getting rid of car dependency, reaching net zero, even about waterways, drinking water and the Aboriginal rights. They have been planning districts and growing areas. So as you can see, there's a lot in these documents. If you want to submit a DA and it does not comply with these rules, you must demonstrate how you're going to achieve to reduce travel demand, especially by car, what your public transport opportunities are, where your local access to education, jobs, services, open space, or better known as undeveloped land and community activities are. You need to show your cultural entertainment, sport and recreation and educational activity options, while reinforcing local identity with public spaces designed to invite community interactions that enable a sense of social inclusion, of well-being, comfort and belonging, while designed to be greener. Do you think the everyday Aussie will be able to plan this, to be able to afford to build this? What is a local identity? And again, with the design to be greener. Thank you all for your time today, and I hope that you leave here today with questions that drive you to seek the answers. Thank you.
So I was at Woolworths at Glendale the other day, and I went through the self-serve checkout because I thought I'd be autonomous here, and it was great. It was nice to actually go through that, and and I'd gone shopping just beforehand, and I'd filled in I had a shopping trolley and I had a bag of goodies, and I got to the checkout and I put all my stuff through, and it wouldn't let me pay, and I thought, card's okay, money's in the account. What's going on? What it was that I didn't realise above me was a monitor, was a camera, and in front of me was a camera. And so when the shop assistant who came over after fixing a few other people up, came over and she brought the screen up, and I could see, and I noticed I wasn't balding yet, which was good, but I could see a top look down at me, and I could actually see my face, and I'm thinking, and she goes, oh, it's because you've done shopping somewhere else. It's a security check. And I went, I'm being monitored? And she goes, yeah, but the amount of thieving that goes on here. And she walked away, and I went, oh. Anyway, she came back and she wanted to give me another little bit of education. And I went, okay, that's really interesting, but at what cost? And she goes, oh, if it was your business and you were losing that amount of money. Now, I've worked in those environments before, and I know there's a lot of thieving goes on. And I said to her, one glaring thing that's sort of coming out for me at this point in time is that you and I are having a beautiful discussion. We've got differing views, but we're having an interaction. We're having this face-to-face conversation, and we're interacting with each other. If we had that still, how much thieving would be going on? All right? So there's a balance between technology, and we need to move forward. All right, I'm 52 years of age, and I've seen a few things in my 52 years, and I've had the privilege of actually having both sets of grandparents, so I've got a history of being able to sort of see that, and it's been so interesting actually watching, hearing the evolution of society as we've introduced technology. But we've got to find a balance between humanity and who we are as evolving creatures with technology as well. And how do we find that balance? Well, it has to be a human-centred approach. And I think that really what comes down to it. So.
Hello everyone, it's a real pleasure to be in Cessnock. I'm from the Central Coast, so it's not too far away. We're under the same Greatest Cities Plan, the 6 Cities Plan. And I just wanted to say how much I appreciate Jess Jurd and the connection I've made with her, and I think the people of Cessnock are very, very lucky to have such a wonderful woman standing up. Yeah. Because it's not easy in these current times, it's not easy to stand up and stand firm on certain things. So deep appreciation to her. I'm part of Community Voice Australia, and we have an arm on the Central Coast, and we're advocating for government and public-private partnership transparency and accountability with any plans that are rolling into our towns and our cities, and we want the community to have a genuine seat at the table. So everywhere I go, what I look at through that frame, how much is the community aware of what's going on, how much of a voice do they have, what is the power structure, how are plans being implemented within our towns and our cities and within Australia. Is it coming from the bottom up like it should within a democracy, or is it coming from the top down? So that's how I look at things and unpack things. So I'm going to go over a bit, and at the end I'm going to focus on the Hunter area and just a bits and pieces I found out. So it's up to, what I show you is 100% factual. I just show you what's happening around the world. It's up to people whether or not they're concerned by the model that's coming in. So I've also given you some groups and networks to, if you are concerned, to keep an eye on within the Hunter, and I'm sure there's a lot more. So smart cities and global cities, what are they and what are the implications? And the questions I always have around this is, why are we so unaware of the breadth of the Smart City Plan? What implications are there when government and big business partner, and who holds the power? What's the power balance there? Who holds the global corporates and their structures accountable? How do community members have a say in a purported democracy? And what level of control will this usher in? Who will be in charge? And what does it mean for humanity? So big questions. So smart technology, often you can see that it stands for self-monitoring, analysis, reporting technology. That's a component of a smart city, is the technology. And here you've just got a picture of smart city components. So you can see that it's smart government, online government. We are smart digital citizens, so we connect and communicate through the internet. And you've got smart buildings, you've got smart farming and agriculture, which is indoors, which is interesting for an area that is agriculturally based in the Hunter. And I'm just going to read you some definitions from different sources around what a smart city is. So it's about embracing integrated and automated information and communication technologies to help optimise all city operations, help sustainability goals and better quality of life. It's a digital interface in traditional infrastructure or streamlines some city operations using big data analytics and technology to make better decisions. And then this is from Wikipedia. It's a technologically modern urban area that uses different types of electronic materials and sensors to collect specific data. Information gained from that data is used to manage assets, resources and services efficiently. So I'm no expert in any of this. I've just been from a year and a half ago starting to have a look at what's going on, becoming quite concerned around what's happening in Australia and around the world. So all I've done is try to look at what's going on and try to understand. So again, I'm no expert and I don't want to put myself forward like that, just somebody who's trying to research and understand what smart cities are. And I actually shouldn't have to do it. It should be being spelt out by government officials. So this is the Australian Smart Communities. Smart data, this is what a smart community is. It's smart data, again, smart capability, which means that we get better at using, devices. Australian Smart Communities Association works with local government, industry organisations, researchers and individuals to build the knowledge, skills, capacity, policy and confidence that drives smart communities. So they use data about citizen engagement. Smart Cities Council and its partners will review how data can be collected about citizen engagement from citizen activities that involve mobility and the built environment. So how we move around our towns, what we do in our towns, how we feel about it. So they want to collect data on our movement, on how things are used, also how we feel about it. So case studies about how sentiment, emotion and activity can be used to determine the level of citizen engagement and their needs. A smart city is a city in which a suite of sensors, typically hundreds or thousands, is deployed to collect electronic data from and about people and infrastructure so as to improve efficiency and quality of life. And then a smart city uses digital technology to connect, protect and enhance the lives of citizens. Internet of Things sensors, I'll tell you a little bit more about that. Video cameras, social media and other inputs act as a nervous system, providing the city operator and citizens with constant feedback so they can make informed decisions. So you can just see how it's about collecting data. It's very much about collecting data on where you go, what you do through video camera, through cameras, through how you use your social media, so you're just being collected data on. This just says we need to invest in smart infrastructure, deploying proven information and communications technologies, smart devices, sensors and software that give our existing infrastructure the equivalent of digital eyes and ears. These intelligent devices enable more efficient and effective monitoring and control of our energy and water systems, transportation, networks, human services, public safety operations. Basically, all core government functions can be done through this digital infrastructure where it collects data and then that data informs the government as to what they need to do next. So So my concern, and I am concerned about this structure, one of the things why I'm concerned is because it's all just, well, firstly, it's about privacy. So how is data going to be collected and what is our privacy? And there's a lot, with looking at smart cities, there's a very big picture that needs to be built. There's like a jigsaw puzzle. So it's not just this component and that component, it's how the whole system can come together to become quite a very controlling system. My other issue and concern is that it is, and I'll go on to show you, it's governed by very, very big corporate global interests. So we are all, the people are being managed and then that management through data and our data and not having, potentially any privacy, then goes up through government to say what government needs to do with us. Where is our voice? Where are we going to be sitting when it's got massive global corporate partners in bed with business? And I'll go on to show you how they are. Where are we as the people who live in these towns and cities, and where is our voice? So what is a smart city? Smart cities are a consequence of the fourth industrial revolution. How many people are aware of the fourth industrial revolution? Yeah, so it's about a third of the people in the room. All of this smart cities is only possible because of the field of big data has pushed the boundaries of privacy, confidentiality and ownership of information. With these new ways of collecting data, a caveat must be mentioned. Large amounts of data may be dehumanising in several ways. And the researcher must always keep in mind that behind the sets of numbers and information that there are human beings. How will smart cities and the fourth industrial revolution carry on our cultural legacies and mould and shape our very identities? The answer to these questions will soon be coming or knocking at our door. So the future of smart cities and privacy. Smart cities are the future. There's no denying that. Like in other industries before, technology will continue to intertwine with city services and infrastructure until most major cities can be categorised as a smart city. Laws will need to be passed, regulations will need to become standard, data collection will need to be limited to essential services only. If citizens want to keep their right to privacy, they will need to strive for change in not only how their cities work, but how governments treat their right to privacy. The other issue with data collection is it can be used in multiple different ways. You can put a narrative on data collection and you can spin it in a certain way to prove that you need something. So you've also got to look at the way data is used. So here we have, if we look at some of the big players behind the scenes around this smart cities, this is the United Nations, the United for Smart Sustainable Cities. It's a global initiative that provides an international platform for information exchange and partnership, building to guide cities and communities in achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And you'll see it's always coming through the UN's SDGs, 17 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. So this serves as the global platform to advocate for public policy and to encourage the use of information communication technology to facilitate and ease the transition to smart sustainable cities. So this is global in nature. In Australia it came down, I think it might be in government plans prior, but it's from the 2016 Smart Cities Plan under Malcolm Turnbull. Okay, so we have KPMG and Cisco partnered to drive smart city strategy in Australia, and I think again that's 2017. I'm going to come back to KPMG. We have Smart Transport New South Wales, and again, if you read through it, it talks about embedding sensors in everything for data. And we have the Smart Places Playbook. It will help us to harness the power of data and smart technologies to deliver more resilient places. Then we're coming on now to the 6 cities region. So Jess talked about that. In the 6 cities region, this is those 17 Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations. They're through pretty much every government document. And the Hunter Valley is also part of this, or the Lower Hunter as part of, and we're all now a global city region. I just want to say we're getting into the smart cities. How are we going to be a smart city? This is the ex-Premier talking when he was announcing the major 6-city plan.
But I want to do even more to cement Sydney's reputation as the smart city down under. So we will establish a new department of enterprise and investment. And within that department, I will appoint a minister for science, innovation and technology. The opportunities we create will fall to the 8 million people who call New South Wales home. And we will make New South Wales the smartest state.
Okay, so it's talked about there. In the Central Coast, we haven't got it in any government plans currently, but we've got it being advertised in the local newspaper, under seek.com, that they want a Smart Cities Implementation Manager for the Central Coast under Ausgrid. So that's how we find out that it's coming into our town when it's not even in any government document currently. Okay, so to understand why, well, you know, to understand the bigger picture around this, I just need to give you some context. And we'll go back to the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and this is the World Economic Forum, and they have created the Centre for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And what is it, and what does it mean? So this is again the World Economic Forum explaining it. We stand on the brink of a technological revolution that will fundamentally alter the way we live, work, and relate to one another. In its scale, scope, and complexity, the transformation will be unlike anything humankind has experienced before. We do not yet know just how it will unfold, but one thing is clear: the response to it must be integrated and comprehensive, involving all stakeholders of the global polity, from the public and private sectors to academia and civil society. A fourth industrial revolution is building on the third, the digital revolution that has been occurring since the middle of the last century. It's characterised by a fusion of technology that is blurring the lines between the physical, the digital and biological spheres. So more and more embedding technology into every single aspect of our lives, as well as into our bodies. So the fourth industrial revolution will change not only what we do, but also who we are. It will affect our identity and all the issues associated with it: our sense of privacy, our notions of ownership, our consumption patterns, the time we devote to work and leisure, and how we develop our careers, cultivate our skills, meet people, and nurture relationships. It's already changing our health and leading to a quantified self, and sooner than we think it may lead to human augmentation. It's disrupting almost every industry in every country, and the breadth and depth of these changes herald the transformation of entire systems of production, management and governance. The possibilities of billions of people connected by mobile devices with unprecedented processing power, storage capacity and access to knowledge are unlimited. And these possibilities will be multiplied by emerging technology breakthroughs in fields such as artificial intelligence, robotics, the Internet of Things, autonomous vehicles, 3D printing, nanotech, biotech, material science, energy storage, and quantum computing. They talk about how it's going to change governments. Governments will gain new technological powers to increase their control over populations based on pervasive surveillance systems and the ability to control digital infrastructure. On the whole, however, governments will increasingly face pressure to change their current approach to public engagement and policy making as their central role of conducting policy diminishes, owing to new sources of competition. So who are these new sources of competition as to why government is no longer just going to be the policy-making arm? Well, it's business. It's massive business, massive corporates. So the power of capitalism, Larry Fink, this was his letter to CEOs in 2022. Employees are increasingly looking to their employer as the most trusted, competent and ethical source of information, more so than government, the media and NGOs. But there is a massive push with stakeholder capitalism and public-private partnerships to see that government and businesses and really big global corporate structures are embedded and integrated with each other, and they are creating policy together. And there's no discussion on any issues with that. It's very, very quiet around all of that. I thought that in Australia we always were a bit suspicious of that when corporates were really embedded within government. So we have the Internet of Things, and this is basically every single thing, every part of what these sensors can actually communicate to each other. So it's all connected and communicating to each other in real time. So you can shut things down, you can turn things off, you can shut things down, you can see what's going on in a certain area. We have the Internet of Bodies, so it's at this point mostly it's wearables, collecting your data, the data of your body, how your body works, but they're talking more and more about ingesting and bringing it in and chipping it within people's bodies. Precision medicine as well. And then we have artificial intelligence, which is basically the brain. And so all the data points go into managed through artificial intelligence, which then coordinates the whole process, how you then program the artificial intelligence to do what it does. And with artificial intelligence, basically where huge amounts of us are going to be out of work fairly shortly. AI is going to replace a lot of the workforce, and this is from the World Economic Forum. So you'll see that bank tellers, clerks, cashiers, data entry, admin jobs, etc., accounting, bookkeeping, even legal jobs, anything, yeah, that sort of work is going to be replaced by AI. And the jobs that are going to come up are all about training AI. We also have digital twinning, so so if you've got all these sensors, you can actually recreate the city or whatever else you can recreate it, but we will have our own digital twin as well. Once you have a digital identification number, you can access enough data on yourself that you actually can have a representation of yourself in the digital world. And that's a whole other topic. All of these are really big topics. We have digital identification. This is the World Economic Forum, and the Australian government's got it sitting in the wings. So here they just talk about digital identity. You're going to need to prove who you are to access any services. So that's in Australia at the moment, and it's being worked on by ID 2020, which is Garvey, which is Gates, Bill Gates, Microsoft, Accenture, Rockefellers. We have the central bank digital currency. This is a bit old now. So this shows so central bank digital currency is we will no longer have money, we'll have programmable currency, I guess. I don't know if currency is the right word for it. And so it can be programmable, it can be cut off externally if if you do something that's not, people have had their funds frozen already in the last couple of years. It would make it very simple with central bank digital currency. It also can be programmable, so you have to spend it within a certain amount of time, which is also being talked about. So that's a map of where everyone's at around the world, because everything is being worked on globally. It's all completely across the board. We have the public-private partnership model, which I talked about before. The World Economic Forum sees themselves as the sort of, the governing body around this public-private partnership model. It basically is that government and corporates are working together. And stakeholder capitalism, so you can see where it says civil society, and so it's the big companies, the big corporates, the international community, which is like the United Nations and the World Economic Forum, these big international bodies, and then we have the governments, and we have civil society. And civil society is where we fit in, but it's actually they're looking at non-government organisations, unions, schools, universities, to action groups. And a lot of action groups are actually funded by corporates. So there's a lot of funding going on behind the scenes to the people if we are in there as civil society, our voices aren't going to be represented, I don't believe. Okay, so the World Economic Forum, why it's concerning. This is the World Economic Forum. This is Wikipedia. It's an international, non-governmental and lobbying organisation. It's mostly funded by its 1,000 member companies, typically global enterprises with more than US $5 billion in turnover. So that's who the World Economic Forum is. Then they have strategic partners. I think it's about 100 that have a higher position within the World Economic Forum. And they have been criticised over the years, including the government's corporate capture of global and democratic institutions, its institutional whitewashing initiatives, the public cost of security, the organisation is tax exempt, unclear decision processes and membership criteria, a lack of financial transparency. And they have the Global Futures Council, and they look at things like the metaverse. So as much as, another big aspect to all of this is the metaverse, where you actually, the virtual reality, those headsets you see, you can even get, they're working on it, so it's just like a lens that can go over your eyes, more and more technology where you can interact and have meetings online, where you're not in physical body, but in digital body. So the United Nations and the World Economic Forum signed a partnership, an MOU, in 2019. So you've got the 1,000 largest global corporate interests in the world signing in with the United Nations to bring about the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And item 4 of the MOU was digital cooperation, collaboration between the UN and the Forum to meet the needs of the fourth industrial revolution will seek to advance analysis, dialogue and standards for digital governance and digital inclusiveness, and promote public-private partnerships to address global reskilling and lifelong learning for the future requirements for work and preparing the world's 1.8 billion young people for this transition. And the reason that we're going to need more and more lifelong learning is because AI is going to increasingly take over everything. So it's going to need to be constantly upskilling. So the UN SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goal number 11, is make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient and sustainable. And if you notice a lot of the framework, we're in a crisis capitalism model where everything is needing to be done to stop crisis. You know, it'll be environmental crises, it'll be health crises, and it'll increasingly become so that everything is justified for those reasons. I just wanted to go on to the 2041 plan, the Hunter Regional Plan 2041. It's a new approach to how we plan for our communities. Infrastructure and place will be considered upfront in a coordinated way, ensuring new homes, jobs and great places will be delivered. So Jess went over a bit of that. There's the 6 cities region mentioned in this plan, and this is the map of the 6 cities region. So the 6 cities region goes from above Newcastle down to through Sydney, the Central Coast, Sydney, down to the Wollongong and out to the Blue Mountains. And again, you'll have the UN SDG goals in there. Under legislation, so this is the Greater Cities Commission Act that was passed in 2022. You'll see that you are the Greater Newcastle City, City of Cessnock, City of Lake Macquarie, City of Maitland, City of Newcastle and Port Stephens. So you're all in there together. And that the cooperation by local councils, so it kind of sits above local council, and the 2041 plan for your area will be superseded by whatever Greater Cities Commission, they're going to put out a plan for your area probably later on this year. So they sort of supersede council in a way, or sit above council. A local council in the 6 cities region, if requested in writing by the Commission, to allow the Commission to have access to and have copies of documents held by the council, and to be, hand over people to work for the Commission if needed to. So your City Commissioner is called Matt Endicott. He's an urban planner. So it's good to know who's who. It's really good to know who's who, who's working, and who you can go to and talk to as well. So this role, the Commissioner role, is actually, they're meant to represent the community. So they're meant to represent the community and your concerns, both to local and state governments. So this Greater Cities Commission is meant to actually sort of bring the local and state plans together. So you know how when you look at government plans, it's like there's one over here, one over here, one over here. So their job is to bring it all together and to represent the community. So I would encourage you to reach out to this Matt Endicott to say, and to start expressing your concerns if you have any, because that is actually what he's paid to do. So another organisation I just found, so I just had a quick look around for the Hunter. You've got the Committee for the Hunter, backs Newcastle Representative Matt Endicott on Greater Cities Commission. So you'll see this same language, and if you start to read government documents and the World Economic Forum, whatever, you'll see the same stakeholders, you'll see the same language through it all. There's a lot of stakeholder support for the Hunter being part of a bigger plan for the global Sydney mega region and making this work. You're meant to be a stakeholder, so if you're not even aware that you're part of it, something's gone a bit amiss. We recognise that success lies in partnerships across governments, business and communities. So that's always the language, is public-private partnership model. And who's saying that is Alison. So the Hunter's chief executive is Alice Thompson. She's the CEO for the Committee for the Hunter, and she has a background as a national lead cities and regions, management consulting, transport and infrastructure at KPMG. So you have a KPMG branch in Newcastle. And if you look at KPMG, you'll see that they do a lot around smart cities. So they've got their booklet, Smart Cities, a snapshot of Australia in 2019, where are you on your smart city journey? So they say that the majority of councils are in, this is in 2019, the majority of councils are in the strategy development stage. The number of local governments piloting projects is notably higher this year at 21%. So that was in 2019. Yet hardly anyone in Australia knows about smart cities. So here they are, you can see KPMG. So I'm saying if you're concerned about this, I think you need to start looking at KPMG. So KPMG and the World Economic Forum are partners. They're a strategic partner of the World Economic Forum, and they're partners in shaping the state of the world. So that's pretty big. And they are also, so this is just a white paper, they write white papers for the World Economic Forum. So if you look at KPMG, and then we're going to go into KPMG and Newcastle University, because now you're part of Greater Newcastle, I think you need to be paying a lot of attention to what's happening in Newcastle. So you've got someone called Paul Scobie, Associate Director at KPMG Australia, so this is in Newcastle. He has the role of the Hunter, accelerating business growth in the Hunter Valley. And he specialises in helping industry and understand and access government incentives. So if you look at Paul, you can then go back and see that he's got a background at the University of Newcastle. Okay, so then you go to the University of Newcastle and you see that University of Newcastle and KPMG collaborate to build a new tech hub in the Hunter. And then if you go to Newcastle University, you'll see that Newcastle University is a United Nations university. It's got an arm of the United Nations at the Newcastle University. Then if you go to the Mayor of Newcastle Council, you'll see that she's on ICLEI, which is the United Nations arm down to local government. And she's actually high up in the position on ICLEI. Then you go look at G20, which Australia is a part of. And you'll see in the city of Newcastle that Newcastle became a G20 Smart Cities Alliance pilot project. That was back in 2020, and it's overseen by the World Economic Forum. So the 1,000 largest corporations in the world are overseeing the G20 Smart Cities project within Newcastle, and KPMG is part of that, and KPMG is partnering with the universities, etc. So this is the way it works. This is how it comes in. It's like this sort of mapping of how it comes into your actual towns. KPMG is known as the Big Four accounting firms, and this ABC article is concerned, this is back in 2018, is the current system now relies nearly entirely on the so-called Big Four accounting firms. So they're no longer doing accounting as much, and they're more doing consulting. So they consult with businesses, but they also audit businesses. And this newspaper article is calling out the massive conflict of interest, and also that they're working in with governments to the extent they are. So I'm going to finish in a second, but this is another reason why this concerns me. So we've got all these Australian Smart Communities. So there's a lot of different associations around. So the Australian Smart Communities Association since starting in 2010, they have represented more than 150 local government authorities, which collectively represent 12.5 million Australians. So they're making a claim that they have represented half of the population of Australia, when I don't know what it would be. Would it be 1% of the Australian population that's even heard the term smart cities? So this is a problem. Where are we? We're being left out. Why are we being left out? Why don't we know anything about it? If this is all in our areas and breathing down our necks, why isn't our elected officials, who are meant to be representing us in a democracy, standing up and telling us what's going on, what it's going to look like, what our privacy rights are, what sort of data is going to be collected, how are our towns going to be transformed? If we're in a fourth industrial revolution where everything's going to change, most people are going to be looking at lifelong learning, especially for our young ones. Jobs are going to be replaced. We're going into an area of life where the merging of humanity and biology with technology. Why don't we know about it? Why isn't the newspapers reporting on it? I'm going to finish on this and I want to do a talk specifically on this at another point, but the other thing that's happening is social impact bonds. I can't get into it very much at the moment, but this is Chalmers. This is back earlier in the year, the Treasurer, and he talks about, so if we could redesign markets for investment in social purpose based on common metrics of performance, many more well-run for-purpose organisations could get much more of the growth capital they need. So you've got to collect data on everything. So basically, we need to put values in place of value, and these are the new models that can guide us in future progress. What we measure directs our action, and we need to measure what matters. So in trying to decipher what all that means, what he's talking about is social impact bonds. So, because I come from a welfare background, you worked for a non-government organisation, you'd get a tender, it was difficult, you'd get a tender from government, you get some money to run a program. Now what they're bringing in, and Chalmers is going to bring it in, you know, really big time, is that corporations put money forward for programs and then they get a financial return. So as I would say in the last 3 years, we've seen Australian people become increasingly vulnerable, and to find out that vulnerability actually can become a market. So the investment firms put in the money, they have to prove certain metrics, so everything, you know, it's got to be this sort of program that has to be proven through data. And then if it's seen as successful, they get all their money back plus a 6, 8, 10% profit return yearly. So it actually costs the taxpayers, because we're the ones paying for it, it costs us more than just paying an NGO who goes and runs the program. We actually have to pay investors and pay them financial returns. So while people are becoming more vulnerable, there's a big market happening within that. And this is how I would call it, social impact bonds profiting from human suffering. We've got a real problem with this model. And I just wanted to finish with this because this is exactly why I'm concerned. As I'm pointing out all these big, massive corporate global structures embedded within our government, who do you think is going to pick up more and more of the wealth? What's happening to the average Australian? We're being squeezed. So the new Gilded Age, top 0.01% of wealthiest individuals now hold 11% of the world's wealth, up more than 400 billion from 10% in 2020, while 100 million fell into extreme poverty. So the pandemic measures were incredibly profitable for some and very, very detrimental for long-term poverty and all the associated vulnerabilities that come about with it. So the world's richest group of 520,000 people. So the world, 520,000 people own 11% of the world's wealth. And they're working. They're working in with the World Economic Forum and these big global corporate bodies. So they saw a boost to their wealth during the pandemic and now own 11%. The 2022 World Inequality Report found that a shift to an online economy during lockdowns and bets on the recovery greatly benefited the rich. So that's in a nutshell why I am concerned about these models that are being put in place without us having any input at all. So thank you.
So just while we're getting ourselves organised, if you have any questions, I've got Kat and Renee in the room. They'll just come past the tables and you can scribble some questions down. We do have probably about 10 minutes. But probably one of the things that I found really important to me, there was a lady which I listened to, and she actually mentioned that when you go against the narrative that's coming through, how society wounds an individual is through shame, abandonment, betrayal and abandonment. And the worst of these is shame, because the difference between guilt and shame is guilt, I made a mistake, shame is I am the mistake. And this is what's really interesting is that, so how do we overcome the fear of this? And so overcoming the fear of this is knowledge, passed through wisdom, and knowing who you are. So being very grounded in who you are, build your immunity towards fear. Because when we're in fear, our brain shuts down. So there's a lot of information that can actually throw you into a fear state. But you're going, hey, let's chew the cud on this. I was brought up on a farm, so farmers in the room know what I'm talking about, right? So we chew the cud on this and we can actually start to process it a little bit more, but we've got to pass it through the wisdom of who we are and be grounded in who we are. And we've got a lot of generational wisdom in this room. And we should be really instilling this in our kids and that side of things as well. But we all should be stepping into the council environment. Let's start having an effective vote. Put your hand up to be involved in the councils. All right. Any questions that we've got so far? Kat or Renee? What have we got? Beautiful. Oh. Some might be rude. Online links to articles handed around. Yeah, there's some information over there, but we'll start to work on this. Yeah, because I think it might be actually worth actually having some information, a resource that we can actually act to.
I'm really happy to share my PowerPoints, which I'm really happy to share my PowerPoints. If anyone wants it, just come and grab me afterwards. I can email them over to you. They're just for common use. I've got most of the references on there to where to find the articles.
Sounds good.
Alrighty.
Ditto.
Today. Okay, this is going to be just a bit of, we're going to sort of fire a few questions. Are there any local organisations we can join to keep in touch? I know you were talking about your organisation.
We've set up Community Voice Australia as an association, and we have a constitution. We have to set up our local area and have a constitution. But you can keep in touch with us, but it's mostly at the Central Coast at the moment that we're focusing, so it might be more for you.
Yeah. Anyone that would like to know, come see me at the end. I'll hang around for you to chat.
Okay. I've got to think, why did not the speakers mention the S word? Is that the sovereign word?
No, it's the slavery word.
Slavery, yeah, absolutely.
It reduced to one word, slavery.
Yeah,
What was
yeah.
the question then?
It's about why didn't the speakers mention the word slavery?
The reason why we didn't mention that is we've got to open everyone's eyes to actually seeing the government documentation. It's little tiny steps to actually finally get everybody on board. Everyone's not at the same level. So we can't go, bam, this is what it is. We've got to do it so everybody that's got a whole different range of information can come through and go, this is the stepping stones to see what something is.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Actually, this is a good one. So I've got questions everywhere. This is great. So we're obviously there's an appetite to learn more. Beautiful. That's exactly what we wanted to achieve from this. Is to actually ask more questions. All right. So some of these ones we might not be able to answer straight away, but they're questions that I encourage you to sit there and go, how do I answer that question? And how do I get that information out to my immediate circle? So this actually fits in really well. How can we be effective against the billions of dollars, resources and corruption of the people planning this attack on our life and well-being?
Okay, that is a great question. And a few of you have actually asked me this question before. Now, I'll take you back to my presentation where I said, in the public interest. Remember when I was talking about that? And I was saying that that is where they say a development is going to happen because in the public interest they see it as a good fit. So what we need to be on to is on the government website, the local council will have any development, their planning that they are wanting to do will all be on there. You have to put in your submissions. If you want something, put in a submission. Say, I like that idea. You don't like it, you put it in and say, I don't like that idea. It's great for either side of the fence. So that's pretty much where how you come up against the big money is you have to be on these sites watching. They'll have road networks on there, they'll have planning for a new city, all these sorts of things will be all on there. And that's when you have to have your say, because if you don't have your say then you've got to be on to your councillors for your states or your local stuff. And again, when they come to us, if there's not enough submissions, a lot of people will vote still in favour of the recommendation that council's put forward because there's not enough submissions to say, hey, the town don't seem to want to vote for that.
How many submissions do you
As many as you can.
As many as you can. What about people on the land? How do people on agriculture, I think that word's fit into smart? Is that? Acreage, sorry. Acreage fit into smart.
Can you answer that?
Yeah. Okay, well, what I've been sort of reading into and looking at too is, you know how I was talking to you about your land values? How your land values are all gone up? The planning documents that I've been paying attention to seem to me like you might not be out on your property. But that, I might leave it at that because it's just a thought.
It's just a thought.
Yeah.
Again, the United Nations has put out a rural, I can't remember the name of the document, I was reading it the other day. I couldn't, so one of the things that you're known for under this 6 cities plan, so we're all like a city, Central Coast is one, you're the Hunter, Lower Hunter and Newcastle, You're going to be renewable energy because you are put under renewable, as well as Central Coast Renewable Energy Zone at the end of last year by EnergyCo. So I think you're going to find more and more wind turbines in this area. And from my understanding from farmers and farming is that it's incredibly hard to live around the wind turbines, even on the host farms.
Documentation to make it.
So I think there's lots of different ways that, so the future of farming from what I've looked at in agriculture is indoor and vertical farms and synthetic meat and laboratory meat. So I guess I'm just looking at pieces of the puzzle and seeing farmers are getting increasingly squeezed and blamed for climate change and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, sorry.
Beautiful. So one of the other things is the seduction of this. Is that there's some really good stuff here. I remember as a kid, I used to ride my bike around the Dandy Knolls in Victoria, and I probably moved out to the country. And everything was sort of a touch point. It wasn't that far away. So there's some really lovely thing about being local and community. Food miles, those of us who are interested in food miles, how far our food goes. Local resources and all that sort of stuff. So this is what's really interesting about the seduction of what's actually coming in.
The thing that I think with the 15-minute cities and the 15-minute walking cities, like they say it in the Central Coast as well, that you're going to have access to every single thing within a 15-minute walk. Well, the only way you can do that is have everyone packed up really high. Like you can only have that happen in a high-density area where you have your supermarket sort of underneath and your public transport and the doctor around the corner. Like you can't walk everywhere within 15 minutes and have all your services met. So that's the question that comes into my mind. And they are looking at, the planning and the housing and to have more and more, so you can go higher and higher and increase the height of planning of buildings.
Yep, that's it.
Good question, because we do have, we've seen some interesting things over the last 3 years. I mean, currently over in the Dutch farmers are standing up against a bit of a tyrannical narrative that's being pushed through. There's about 3,000 farms they want to shut down under the guise of climate. Now, I'm very much into, don't shit in your nest, look after it. Don't throw stuff in the ocean, look after it. But while there's a political monetarised process in actually pushing the climate agenda, are we getting the full truth? Are we getting the real insight into that?
I need to do more research into it, but you've got the whole carbon credit markets, and then you've got the whole biodiversity offset markets, and I need to look at it more. So net zero doesn't mean that you have no carbon, it means that you're offsetting everything. So you're paying for it, so you can pollute and then you just pay for your carbon credits from some other country or some farm. And there's a whole system, it's a whole system, I need to look into it, but they're also monetising and putting nature on the stock market. So this is increasingly with the commons and water and so again, I need to really look at it because I want to present on it, because what they're doing to the environment, they're monetising it. And then very wealthy individuals will be able to own rivers and common land, etc. So I think we really have to get our head around and look underneath the language to see what's being proposed. There's also carbon capture and storage where you have, you capture the carbon and then it can be used to blast through shale to get more oil. And then, you've got this, the storage and being able to move the carbon around, that can go through people's lands as well. It's happening in America, you can't say no to it. And then it's also really, really bad for the environment. I would say another thing in the Central Coast that concerns me and around here is that, they talk about climate change and caring, but then where do it stop being about caring for the environment? Because if you had caring for the environment, you can have really, good processes for agriculture and you can support good farming methods. But climate change then brings in all this, other stuff, like other more scientific, more technological ways of dealing with everything. So I did want to say something else, but it slipped out of my mind. But there's a huge amount to unpack within that topic.
I just quickly touch on that. I did some training with the local government planning guy, and we were actually talking about when you subdivide and offsetting your carbon with the Diversity Act. Now, question that I had was, say I want to subdivide on section A, knock down all the trees, I can do that by offsetting my diversity credits on subject B, land. Same amount of area, and you're buying the credits of B. Now, the thing that I asked was, if I have an endangered frog on section A, but section B doesn't have that, will I still be able to offset those credits? Now, I went into a little bit of the paperwork since, and it seems like, you know, the endangered frog matters, but what this director for planning told me was, if it's already categorised and zoned as residential, that endangered frog doesn't matter. So you're offsetting your credits on B. Doesn't matter that we're going to take out the endangered frog's lifestyle in A at all, because it's already zoned for residential. If it was still rural, it'd be a bit different.
Okay.
I like this one. Who fact checks Wikipedia? Someone who does Facebook. And the difference between conspiracy theory and not is about 6 months.
I think it's less than that now.
Which is good. And that's the problem is, again, that's part of the shame. If they can shame you and say you're a tinfoil hatter because you dare to question, I mean, it's pretty low thinking. And this is where we've got to build our resilience.
Yeah.
You know, we've got to build our community.
Yep.
A community of actually thoughtful individuals who are individuals. You know, and this is what's really important. So look, you know, there's things about the Lima Accord. There's a lot of information out there. All right, this is just, you know, this is just a, you know, one meeting that we're actually looking at doing. We're looking at bringing in information. Would you like to hear more from these lovely ladies? Yeah.
This feels good, doesn't it?
So, look, I'm mindful of time. We do have a hard stop, all right? So there are a couple more questions, and they do really talk about that. Is it going to be a 15-minute city? It's going to look that way. But I know from, as an Aussie, my father was born in Germany, my grandfather was Scottish, you know, so we're all full-blooded mongrels here, all right? So we've all got an interesting history. But the beautiful thing that we've got within Australia is they actually had this amazing country. And I don't know if anyone has gone west, there's a lot of land. All right, so this idea of scarcity, you know, if you want to look at influence, you look at the what was it called, Kat? 7 points of influence? You know, you start looking at that, one of them is this illusion of scarcity. All right, we have such abundance here.
Yeah, but the trouble is, a lot of that land out there, what we've been at there, it's just red dirt.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It does not support life.
Yeah, it doesn't support life, but it can. You know, but the thing is that I'm not an advocate of going out west because I think some of the land is very arid. I know what you're saying, but this idea, this illusion of scarcity, come on. You know? Look, the world was supposed to have, I think it was supposed to have ended, you know, I've heard so many things that, you know, from a climate perspective. I think the wonderful, amazing Greta Thunberg put forward this idea that I think the world was going to be, you know, we're going to be in this catastrophe of global warming and all that sort of stuff, which is all good. I've got a hair with blue. What was that?
2 days ago.
Well, world ended 2 days ago. Welcome to heaven, guys. We've done all hell.
What exactly did you mean by the amazing Greta Thunberg?
It was tongue in cheek. No, that's all right. I'm a bit sarcastic. But hey, look, I'm going to have to call it quits there. Round of applause for these amazing women.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Round of applause for the organisers, Christine, Jason and their crew. Thank you. Thank you to the bowling club to have the courage to be able to let us have this space as well. So, from me to you, much love. Thank you for turning up on a Saturday. Let's keep this conversation going, eh? All right.